The Silent Hill 2 remake was a huge undertaking. It's a visually stunning and atmospheric rich reimagining of one of the most iconic survival horror games ever made, and from the moment you step back into the town's fog-drenched streets, it becomes clear that this remake offers more than you thought. It sure had some big shoes to fill, but I wholeheartedly believe that Bloober Team made something great here, pleasing both new fans and old alike. One of the standout elements of Silent Hill 2 has always been its hauntingly atmospheric music, and in the remake, it's nothing short of phenomenal. Akira Yamaoka, the legendary composer who scored the original, makes a triumphant return to reimagine the soundtrack you're already familiar with, while also introducing new pieces to complement the experience. The result is a soundscape that perfectly captures the eerie, oppressive tone of the game, heightening every moment of tension and dread. Yamaoka's score has always been an integral part of Silent Hill's identity, and it's clear that Bloober Team understood the assignment when approaching this remake. Bringing Yamaoka back to work on the soundtrack feels like a statement in itself. If nothing else, it shows just how faithful the developers wanted to be in recreating the original spirit. Whether it's the chilling ambient tracks that slowly build on ease, or the more intense compositions that accompany moments of danger, the music works in harmony with the visuals and gameplay, pull you deeper into James's nightmarish journey. There's something about Yamaoka's work that is inherently timeless. Whether it's the familiar melodies that evoke a sense of lost hope, or the newer pieces that seamlessly blend with the old to enhance the atmosphere. The soundtrack doesn't just set the tone, it actively manipulates how you feel in key moments, making the experience all the more visceral. Even in the quieter moments of the game, the music lingers in the background like a subtle creeping reminder that the town of Silent Hill is always watching and always waiting. Beyond the music though, the environmental sound effects are meticulously crafted to put you on edge. The distant scraping of metal, the unsettling whispers, and the squelch of something unseen lurking in the darkness. It all plays with your mind, making you feel like you're never truly safe. Even the silence can be terrifying in this game, as it builds anticipation for the next unknown horror to reveal itself. The remake also does a fantastic job with spatial audio, making use of modern sound technology to immerse players even further. Whether it's the clanging of Pyramid Head's great sword dragging across the floor, or the distorted moans of the monsters creeping up behind you, the directional audio makes every sound feel like it's closing in on you. Wearing headphones amplifies this effect, as it feels like the horrors of Silent Hill are closing in from all sides. One thing that particularly stood out to me was the sound of James's footsteps, especially when moving through different environments. The crisp detail, from the crunch of the leaves to the echo of the footsteps in the hallways, reinforces the eerie sense of isolation. Every time his steps echo through the dark, empty spaces, it reminds you how alone you are in this twisted world. Bloober Team has clearly understood how critical sound is to Silent Hill 2, and their attention to detail helps maintain the same unnerving atmosphere of the original, while adding a modern immersive layer to the experience. It's strange to think about how people initially reacted to Silent Hill 2 Remake in the lead up to its release. There was a lot of skepticism, and understandably so. Konami's recent track record with the franchise has left many fans wary. And then there's Bloober Team, who, while showing promise, hasn't had the most stellar reception of some of their past projects, so I get why people were critical, even cynical, and how this beloved classic was being handled. That said, from everything we saw prior to release, I thought this game looked pretty great. Every trailer and reveal seemed to showcase a deep respect for the source material, and while some concerns were valid, the overall direction appeared pretty solid to me. Yes, Bloober Team's earlier work wasn't perfect. Games like The Medium didn't land as well with everyone, but personally, I found it pretty intriguing. It had a unique concept with dual world mechanics, even if it did have some shortcomings. Too many flesh doors for my liking, honestly. But seeing them take on a project as monumental as Silent Hill 2, I can see why people were cautiously optimistic. What feels odd now, though, is a sudden shift in reception after the remake launched. It's almost like a complete 180-degree turn. Many of the same people who were incredibly skeptical have now admitted the remake turned out far better than expected. Don't get me wrong, I think it's great that people are willing to give it a try, and own up to being wrong when they enjoy something. It's refreshing, actually. But it's still bizarre to see just how many switched up their opinions so quickly. Perhaps this reaction is tied to the people's sense of nostalgia and their fear of ruining what they see as the crown jewel. I can understand that. Silent Hill 2 holds a special place for many, and the thought of changing or modernizing it might feel like tampering with perfection. But honestly, I think both the original and the remake can exist and be enjoyed. I've never believed that remakes replace the originals. They simply offer a new way to experience the game. If anything, they introduce classic stories to a new audience. It's funny, because just last year we saw something similar with the Resident Evil 4 remake. While it didn't face quite the same level of cynicism, I still saw a lot of pessimism about how it would turn out. But in the end, the remake was incredible, and it didn't take anything away from the original. Both versions of Resident Evil 4 are still amazing in their own right, just as I believe is the case for Silent Hill 2. Admittedly, I'd never fully beaten the original Silent Hill 2. I've only played about a couple hours, and to make matters worse, it was the version from the infamous HD collection, the one most fans to be considered the worst version. Yes, it's the one with the Comic Sans sign, which by the way makes a subtle return as an Easter egg if you can move the camera out of bounds on PC. But while my experience with the original is limited, I still have a deep respect for it and its legacy, despite having only played it a little. That said, I'd be lying if I claimed the original didn't feel outdated to me. Let's be honest, this is a game from 2001, and while many older games can age gracefully, like Wind Waker for example, the further back you go, the harder it becomes to adjust, especially if you're used to modern controls. The original Silent Hill 2 has a clunky feel by today's standards, which makes it difficult to get fully immersed if you're coming from a more recent gaming background. This isn't to knock the original at all, in fact it's a testament to how impactful it was at the time. But for players like me who have grown accustomed to the refinements of modern games, the remake offers a welcome accessibility that makes the experience feel fresh again. It's not just about making the game easier, it's about making it more engaging and emotionally resonant. The performance capture in the remake plays a big role in this. It's so well done that it elevates the story's emotional weight in a way the original simply couldn't with the technology of its time. The remake gives the freedom to focus on the atmosphere, the tension, and the dread that Silent Hill is known for, without being held back by some of the more dated aspects of the original gameplay. For someone like me who never got the chance to finish the original, the remake feels like the perfect opportunity to experience this iconic story in a way that feels more accessible and immersive. As far as I can tell, the story in the remake retains all the same beats as the original, and yet, as I've mentioned, it feels fresher. I understand that some people have already been firing off in the comments, ready to defend the original, and I get it. A big part of Silent Hill 2's charm comes from the time it was set in. There's a certain atmosphere and aesthetic tied to its early 2000s roots. But what the remake does with both the dialogue and the character design is, in my opinion, a really smart move. Even though the story is still set in the same era, the characters now come across as more grounded and complex, which makes their emotional arcs hit harder. For instance, James's new design is less stiff and robotic in the original. In the remake, his facial expressions and body language feel much more emotional, which enhances the emotional weight of his journey. The performance capture brings out subtle nuances in his character. His despair, guilt, and confusion are palpable in every scene, making it easier to connect with him. Maria too benefits from these updates. In the original, she sometimes felt like an exaggerated character, her dialogue and appearance playing into certain stereotypes of the time. In Remake, however, she is presented in a more nuanced way. Her design feels much more grounded and layered. Her relationship with James and the complexities within it are conveyed much more naturally, which adds depth to her role in the story. Other characters, like Angela and Eddie, have also been given a similar treatment. Their performances are more natural, and the updated visuals portray their struggles in a more serious light. Angela's backstory, for instance, feels even more gut-wrenching thanks to the improved facial animations and voice acting, which convey her trauma in a more raw and believable way. Eddie, who could have been dismissed as a comic relief in the original, now feels more disturbing and tragic due to the added emotional depth in his portrayal. The remake also offers an additional 2 endings to the original 6, which is interesting just how little changes such as viewing a note a few many times can impact that. That is something that the original has too, but I just wanted to highlight just how much detail went into this game even back then. Which is to say that despite some of the things that I felt were improved, I do very much appreciate the source material still, and I can see how impactful it was during that time. One of the most significant changes in the remake is a switch to the over-the-shoulder third-person perspective. For some, this shift will feel like a betrayal of the original's fixed camera angles, which added to the disorienting nature of the game. I can see the argument that not every classic game needs to adopt modern conventions like this. However, for me, this change enhanced the experience. It made everything feel more immediate and intimate, like I was truly in the thick of it along with James. The new camera does have gameplay implications though. By offering a clearer and more controlled view of the environment, it inevitably makes the game easier in some respects. For purists, this might ruin the original experience, but for new players who are looking for a more immersive experience, it can deepen the connection to the world. Silent Hill has never been about punishing difficulty, so the shift didn't feel it undercut the game's core tension to me. Instead, it shrouded more of the environment in mystery, making the town feel larger and more daunting. One of the great things about Silent Hill 2, both in the original and the remake, is its puzzle design. Unlike games like Resident Evil, which lean more heavily on combat, Silent Hill has always prided itself on its brain teasers, and the remake continues this tradition. However, I found the puzzles to be slightly easier this time around, thanks in part to the camera and the additional subtle hints guiding you where to go. It's a fine line to walk, but the remake does a good job of maintaining the challenge without letting you get hopelessly lost, which helps improve the overall pacing of the game. The beginning in particular felt more accessible than the original. In my experience, I got lost far less often, and the balance between exploration and puzzle solving felt smoother, keeping the tension without making me feel stuck, streamlining the experience. That's not to say that it cut any necessary content, but it did shave off a few rougher edges that might have weighed down the pacing. But I want to be clear, this is not me backing on the original, simply stating how they've made, in my opinion, necessary improvements. As I said, while I know Silent Hill 2 was never about intense combat, the remake offers a surprisingly solid combat system that effectively enhances the game's overall tension. I've seen people argue that adding more combat turns the game into something more akin to Resident Evil, but I disagree. Yes, there may be more combat encounters in the remake than in the original, but for me that just added to the constant sense of dread. There's no escape, especially when enemies keep getting back up, forcing you to confront them multiple times. These encounters aren't really meant to be satisfying in the traditional sense. In fact, they're quite frustrating, but intentionally so. The relentless nature of the enemies, their sheer persistence, really made me feel what James was going through, trapped in a nightmare that just wouldn't end. There were moments where I found myself smashing enemies repeatedly with his wooden plank, or later metal pipe, almost out of desperation, as if it was mimicking James's own exhaustion. Also, I'd like to point out how durable those are, because you use them throughout the whole game, bashing in dozens of enemies and a lot of concrete walls, and they don't break. Meanwhile, in other games, you could use a sword made out of vibranium, but it'll still break if it hits anything harder than a marshmallow. The mannequins, or the leggies, as my friends and I call them, and the nurses, were the worst offenders of this. But comparing the two, the leggies were definitely worse. It's bad enough that they jump scare you so often, but worse when you see them climbing and crawling around. But again, that's where the combat shines. It immerses you in his mental state, dragging you deeper into the horror. That said, while this repetition builds the intended sense of fatigue, by the end, it started to wear a little thin on me. The repetitive structure keeps things faithful to the original, but it also made the latter chapters feel a bit like a grind, and like James, I couldn't wait to leave this town for good. But referring to that constant sense of dread also made me greatly overestimate how difficult and scary this game would be, resulting in me playing on the lighter difficulty for combat and running up to my red squares every chance I got to save the game manually. Doing so, I would reload with full health again to avoid using my health pickups as much as possible. In fact, I ended the game with 45 health drinks and 30 syringes. Do I have a problem? Yes, we've established this before in other videos. Will I ever stop? Probably not, because my mind always thinks, what if I need it later? I'd also like to point out that if you're unfamiliar with the series as a whole and you scare easily, it's got more than just a leg up on Resident Evil. Even at its scariest, something like Resident Evil still doesn't really come close. But this is also more of a psychological horror than a traditional one, though it's really at its scariest in my opinion in the first few hours. After that, I think you will find yourself adjusting to it. Or at least I sure did. Graphically, Silent Hill 2 is one of the most impressive games I've seen this year, second only to Hellblade, except technically it's more impressive given the full nature of this game. It's an actual full package. The level of detail in every corner is astounding, from the eerie lighting that casts unsettling shadows across narrow corridors to the foliage and environmental textures that feel almost alive. Each hallway and room brims with intricately designed elements, whether it's the chipped paint on the walls or the unsettling fog that blankets the world outside. The visuals contribute immensely to the overall atmosphere, drawing you deeper into the horror with each unsettling step. And yes, if you're worried, the fog is done just as well as it was in the original. But in this remake, it goes as far as to change James's appearance throughout the game, appearing more rugged and tired, with slightly sunken eyes. When comparing quality and performance modes, I honestly struggle to notice much of a difference aside from the frame rate. Now, I'm not exactly a performance snob, but I usually pick up on subtle differences between these modes if I look closely enough, and as a reviewer, that is kind of my job. But you expect some clear visual improvements in quality mode, like sharper textures or enhanced lighting effects, but those details were barely noticeable. There were a few instances where reflections looked a bit clearer in puddles under quality mode. For example, at the beginning, I remember specifically seeing a tree reflected in one of the game's rare outdoor puddles. But strangely, even this was kind of an anomaly. In most other scenes, such as when you're looking through mirrors, there were no reflections at all, which struck me as bizarre. This is especially noticeable because the game opens in a bathroom, where you can see a reflection, even after the opening cutscene. But after that, mirrors throughout the game remain eerily blank, regardless of what mode you're playing in, which is odd considering your flashlight should be bringing in more light there, but it made no difference.
Editor Mel here. Actually, there's something that I didn't consider until just now. Okay, so in the footage, you may have realized that there actually is some reflections. I was kind of misspoke when I said at all. In most of the other points in this game, like when it's really dark, you can't really see anything. It's pretty much just black. It's not really reflecting a whole lot. Here is probably the best place where you can actually see it to the best degree. But notice how there's no reflections for James at all. Like, he's just kind of, it's like he's a vampire almost. But then it got me thinking. There is a post I saw on Twitter where it is going over a theory about how this isn't just a remake for us, but rather a remake for James. It goes on into a whole elaborate thing, and it's a whole thread that you can read. I will not spoil it for you, but I'm thinking that this may have been intentional. And if this is the case, Bloober team, You got me there. This is something awesome. Which, if you're interested in, I will include the link in the description. So go and check that out. But anyway, back to it.
Though, speaking of light, another minor difference I spotted was in the way that light reflected off of certain surfaces, like floors, later in the game. But beyond these isolated examples, both modes felt largely the same to me, which technically speaking is a positive, considering you won't be missing out on anything while playing in performance. But then it begs a question as to what the purpose of quality mode is in the first place. It plays at a lower frame rate, and it looks nearly identical, and would be even less noticeable while you're actually playing. That said, the lighting design in general is stunning, perhaps one of the strongest elements in the remake. Every flicker of your flashlight and every glimmer of light cutting through the darkness is meticulously crafted. Yet, you don't always get to fully appreciate these gorgeous lighting effects because of how frequently the game immerses you in almost complete darkness. This darkness builds tension, but it can be also taxing on the eyes. Your flashlight is often your only reliable source of light, and while that adds to the oppressive atmosphere, it can make extended play sessions straining. I found myself needing to take breaks between chapters to give my eyes a rest, and I would highly recommend doing the same if you're not in a rush to finish it. The game is a few hours longer than the original, stretching it from around 10 hours to around 17. I finished it in almost 18 hours, but that was with me taking my time with it. But if you're quick enough, you could also technically beat it under 10, rewarding you a trophy too. Either way, ultimately, this remake stands as a testament to the timelessness of Silent Hill 2's narrative and theme. It invites players to confront their fears and explore the complexities of human emotion, just as the original did over 2 decades ago. Whether you're revisiting the fog-shrouded streets or experiencing them for the first time, the Silent Hill 2 remake is a haunting journey worth taking, proving that some classics can indeed evolve while retaining their soul.